Hello, Jeans for Justice community. It's Jess, and I'm here with an amazing friend, sister, and guest. And her name is Amber. Amber, would you like to introduce yourself to our J4J family here?
Hello, my name is Amber Hartnell, and I am so delighted to be sharing with you today. Thank you for the opportunity, Jess, to show up.
It's my pleasure. So one thing that I've really feel so grateful for in the last few years is that by fate, by destiny, I get to encounter some of the most amazing, heart-centered, transformational leaders that I could ever imagine encountering, and sometimes in the most unexpected ways and places. So Amber and I found ourselves on a hike yesterday and started really connecting with her about the work that she's doing in the world, the mission that she's on, and really the story that brought her into this epically radiant, whole, powerful being that she is, taking a massive stand for the health and wellness and vitality of women and men on our planet. And so I wanted to share a little bit about her story, how she got here, how she got to be this radiant being that she is, and really especially because I just see her as a incredible pillar of hope and possibility. And so I'll just really, she's incredibly articulate. So Amber, first, I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit about where you're at currently, what your mission is all about, and just speak into that a little bit.
Thank you. Well, to condense and make it as concise as possible, really my mission fundamentally is to live and breathe as an embodied example of possibility, of one who has really traversed the depths of trauma, of pain, of difficulty, and learned how to actually transform it into gold, to really discover that our greatest challenges harbor our greatest gifts. So really to inspire that in the hearts of all who are ready to receive that transmission. Yeah, it's really a remembering of our wholeness, that regardless of what we've experienced in our life, the traumas, the challenges, that at the core we are always whole and intact, and that remains unmarred no matter what we've discovered or what we've gone through. So discovering the process that we can dissolve through those membranes to get to the wholeness, that's what I love to serve.
And can you share a little bit about your story it's one of the most amazing stories I've heard. Can you share a little bit about the trauma that you experienced and what brought you into this place of knowing that this possibility, this wholeness was available for you?
Yeah, well, I'd start with the most poignant and profound was that when I was 7 years old, I lost my mother very suddenly in a scuba diving accident, and my life changed radically from that point. And I went to go live with my father, who was really essentially a tormented alcoholic and delusional, and it was very confusing on many levels, not knowing what was real, what was true, what was real, and suffered a lot of abuse. So he began very regularly whipping me with a belt, and for quite some time I endured intense pain in that experience. And until one day I discovered that instead of contracting away from the impact of the belt, I heard just melt. And I began to just melt into the bed, to just soften and really just allow it instead of resisting it. And at that moment I discovered that in that instant the pain lessened. So whenever it came time for me to get the belt again, I began to experiment with my relationship with that and discovered that I could really melt more and more and more until I finally arrived at the place where I really felt like more space than form. And in that place where I arrived, where there was no resistance to the impact, I did not feel pain any longer. I suddenly experienced the impact of the belt as a shockwave moving through me. And I could see the shockwave being the shockwave of pain from my father that went far beyond my father. So his stepfather, like all the men who had hurt these little boys, and this lineage of abuse and suffering that had been passed forward, then entering into me, but instead of then crystallizing into traumatic patterns that would then be passed on through me, they were actually being sucked into my heart. And because there was no resistance, my heart was a complete openness and an absorption of the shock wave. And as it was sucked into my heart, it was transmuted. And of course, didn't have these words when I was a child. I'm describing it this way now. But essentially what I experienced as it was sucked into my heart was the love and the compassion growing. So I suddenly saw my father as this hurting child, like the abuse that he'd suffered, and it was all that he knew. And he was tormented by it. And so as this brute force was entering me, it was transformed into pure power. So over those years, those 7 years I was with him, I grew in love and compassion. And there was plenty of distortion to have to unravel after that, but it set the precedent in my life. For every challenging experience that I would arrive into, I related to it as an opportunity to discover a gift. And to release resistance to what is, to turn towards challenges and become curious about them rather than identifying with them. So curious in the sense I'm like, I wonder what this has for me. I wonder what this has to reveal for me. And so that really was a significant turning point in my life that really did activate one of the core gifts in my life that I now get to share with the world, is how to release resistance to what is so that we can really find our true power and our true gifts, because pain is inevitable. We're all going to experience pain, but I believe that suffering is optional, because if we don't have resistance to the pain, it moves through. It's like water going through a hose. If you put a kink in the hose, it's going to ram up against that point, still attempting to get through it. There's still that motion. But if we can unkink it, release the resistance, then it can flow through, and it lessens the impact on us.
And we don't have that pressure of all that energy that's getting stuck at that kink, just building and building, which can cause an explosion.
Yeah, exactly.